Hi, Ellie. Very, very nice having you here. Please say a little bit about what you do and who you are.
So my name's Ellie. I'm 26 and I live in Howick in Auckland. And I work with teenagers, 11-year-olds right through to 24, to be specifics, but mostly in the teenage bracket. I run retreats. I also work one-to-one, so like coaching one-to-one. And that can be in cafes or at their house or, in a park somewhere, depending on the weather. And sometimes I work, like this term, for example, I've got an ongoing workshop program thing. So every now and then I'll kind of come up with an idea that will kind of take over a few weeks, and it will be like group work of some kind. So yeah.
That I think it's really important that you do help the young people, and the dedication you've got is amazing. And the fact that you're closer to their age as well somehow, and you can kind of remember what happens at 11, 12, 15, But tell me, what for me is really interesting is what do you find more difficult, to educate the children and give them the tools to work with what bothers them, or you have to get involved with the parents as well somehow?
This is a really interesting question because when I went into this, I knew that obviously whenever you deal with kids, you have to deal with parents in some way. But what I find a lot is, and this is, I don't blame them because this is what parents will do, right? But whenever I have a new client or person I work with, I don't really like calling them clients, but young person that I work with, the parents usually give me a rundown of what to expect. And they'll kind of put the labels and the problems and the issues and who they've been to and what's wrong, and just give me a resume of all the things that could go wrong and everything. And I'm like, thank you, I appreciate the fact that you're giving me that warning, but I don't choose to look at that, if that makes sense. I'm kind of, I don't really care, if that makes sense. I care, but it's like that's not what defines the person to me. And often, more often than not, I've found that when they turn up, because I have it in the back of my head just in case anything does go horribly wrong, but often when they turn up, everything I receive is completely different.
Right.
Like I've been told by some parents that she probably won't talk, and literally they will talk my ear off for the whole session, or she's quite angry and she'll probably be this, but then she's not at all. And it's just I guess it's hard because when I mean, I'm not a parent, but when you live with your child, you receive a certain energy, but then when they come to me, it's almost like there must be some sort of comfort level where they feel that they don't have to do those things to be received.
Do you think it's also the projection of the parents and their perception of the child, obviously?
Yeah, for sure. There's been one girl that I'm working with at the moment that stands out in that area for projection from the parents, like eating disorders from the parents, and body image issues are all being projected onto her. And she's thankfully wise enough to know that that's not her problem, and she knows that that's their projection. But there's a whole lot of other things that every time she tells me, I'm like, wow, like there's nothing with her at all. It's all the parents, and everything that they're saying to her is literally them what they would need to say to themselves, and it blows my mind.
So what do you do in a situation like this? Do you get them involved? Do you find a way to actually invite them for a session separately, or?
This is something that I'm actually steering into now. Like I'm learning now that I've had some more experience working and seeing just how common it is. I am actually looking towards working with parents as well. But what I've realized is that sometimes, because obviously after the first few sessions, usually the parents will want to know, or some of the parents will want to know, how did it go? What did they say? And obviously there's confidentiality, but I find that when I tell them how things have gone, they're either shocked because they weren't expecting it to go that well, or they will say, but okay, but you'll probably find this later. And they're in denial of the fact that actually that there is nothing wrong, because the minute I say that, it's like they have to look at themselves and their own judgment, and they don't want to do that.
Yeah.
So to answer that, yes, I do. I'm getting a bit of a nudge to work with parents. It's just about how to go about it, because often in this case they've been so used to their kid being the problem and being referred to counsellors, not them. So
and it's interesting you said it, because I, as a coach as well, like you, relate very much to what you say. When we coach people, they don't necessarily want to acknowledge what their fault is. And we all have faults, but they are actually the beauties in our character at the end of the day. Yeah. So instead of working with them, we're trying to look at the outer world, what is not working. And they're looking at their kids thinking, as you're saying, okay, let's fix the kids. But instead of mirroring as well. So that's very interesting. Yeah. Can you put in a category some common problems in the children you work with and the teenagers?
You know, the first thing that came to my head was, I wouldn't say they would describe it like this, which is interesting. But the one thing that I would use to summarize is that they don't feel like they have a voice.
Okay.
And so I don't think that's something that they would say directly. None of them have ever directly said to me, I don't feel seen or heard. But all of the stuff that they say about their relationships with their families and stuff, or their friends or schools or whatever the issue is, it's always a case of someone's telling them how they should feel or think or behave, and they don't feel like they know that they have to lash out or cause a disturbance somewhere to be able to at least get acknowledged or given the right attention.
Right.
That
So,
makes sense.
and what is your approach in that situation? What would you teach them?
Often, I love actually trying to put words around this, because it's something that I've been trying to distinguish myself. But I think what I do is actually allow them to just keep talking, and sometimes they're not used to that. Like, I'll literally just not say anything at all, and just some eye contact, or just smile to myself and start getting a little bit kind of relaxed around them, so that they feel that they have to fill the silence, and then that they keep saying stuff, and they're like, oh shit, she's not shutting me down, like, what is this? So I think it's mostly a case of not giving them what they're expecting me to give them, which is often they think, I've got to go to a youth coach or a mentor or whatever, she's going to tell me what to do with my life, whereas I often allow them to figure it out for themselves, and then just validate every single thing they say, and then kind of re-explain back to them what they've said, but with a level of extra kind of juice, I guess, like there's something extra to work on or think about.
So you give them a good ground actually to feel friendly with you and to kind of share and open up.
And often the ones that have said, like, the parents have said to me, like, you're not going to get anything out of it, don't expect much, are the ones that talk the most. So it's quite fascinating.
So there's a projection you were talking about too before. So if you were to kind of be able to change something for the next generation and to leave behind you something with your work, what would that be?
Showing them how to facilitate or hold space for other people, if that makes sense. Like, actually demonstrating what it looks like to listen to someone fully, and like give someone complete freedom to be themselves and say whatever they want to say. Showing them what that looks like and feels like, because like, most of the time, all the ones I've worked with so far have not had that in full capacity. There's always been something added to it, some sort of expectation somewhere. So for me, I think my legacy or impact that I want to make is actually giving them that experience, and something that they will remember and always know is possible, but also give them the opportunity to learn more about that interaction than the actual issues they're facing, if that makes sense, because they often find through that interaction that they don't have problems. It's just people aren't receiving them the way they deep down need to be received.
No. So do you think that's a trust issue as well somehow?
A little bit, and there's one young woman that I'm working with at the moment, occasionally, and she said to me, she's just recently realized how betrayed she's been by everyone that's ever supposed to have helped her. Like, everyone she's been to, she's written a massive list of people that have said they'd be there and just screwed her over in some way. Circumstances are really horrendous, but she's really never been helped before. So I think, just showing people what that's like, giving them that opportunity, that taster.
The love and the support, that's what you're doing. You're holding that space for them, which I think is amazing. I spoke to somebody the other day, and he works in the pharmaceutical business, and he was saying that the amount of antidepressant that's been given to teenagers, it's really shocking. And I have seen that as well. But why do you think New Zealand is one of the highest rates of suicide in teenagers, especially?
I think there's so many factors to this, and it's not my area of expertise. But if I had to go by what I know, it would be that generally there is a bit of denial around. Well, there's quite a lot of denial around the importance of sharing like emotions fully, like and actually speaking, because there's a very much the she'll be right attitude and just get over it kind of macho toxic masculinity kind of culture that goes through, and like it is quite prominent.
It is sad to see so many young people suffering instead of living a joyful life like we did, free, and we didn't have that much social media and so much distractions, so many new things happening in our lives. But
I could probably add a bit to that, just because I think when you mentioned social media, like I think it's interesting because there's a couple of people that I have worked with that have been suicidal before, but social media wasn't something that came into it. It wasn't even a factor. And I'm not saying it's not, and I'm not saying it's got nothing to do with it, because of course it does, but it's just interesting again from my side that the social media side has had no hold on them at all. It's been the human interaction that's been lacking. It's been the ability to hold space for those people and actually allow them to be seen. So there's lots of layers, but
so it's basically the big word that I'm bumping into, talking to so many friends who are working with either as therapists or psychologists. There's one word, unfortunately, coming to all of us, and it's the disconnection word. So what can it be done in that area? I keep wondering, and you just said before, creating a space to listen to them, because if they feel supported, they will connect. They would want to connect. We're wired for connection. There's no other way, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's all it is. And it can be disconnection. And that comes to social media, that comes to people, that comes to every area, the disconnection can happen in all areas.
Totally.
But I've seen it and there's literally 3 people now that I've worked with. One is 15, one is 17, and one is 24. All of them have been diagnosed with a mental health issue. And since working with me, just talking as general human to human fun, bounce around ideas, swear, joke, whatever, have literally, one's quit going to a psychologist, one has baffled her therapist because her therapist's like, I don't know what you did but with the other person, but I can't give that to you. And the other one has actually said, I don't even attach to my mental health issue anymore. I realized that's what they needed to give me so that they could control me rather than what's something wrong with me. I'm like, whoa, like, it's just, all you need is a shift in perspective and someone to not tell you anything, and you got the answer.
I feel also, and you tell me what you think on that topic, is that they're not allowed to be childlike, to play with things, to laugh and to be kind of themselves, to be silly, yeah? And remember when we were 16, we were silly.
Yeah.
So that's another lack of, system applying onto them. Be this, fit in, try to not do this or that, yeah?
Yeah. One of the activities I did with the girls at the intermediate school workshop at the beginning of the year, just for fun, I gave them, as a group, I gave them 3 subjects that you can study in college that were completely unrelated. And I said, right, you've got 5 minutes or 10 minutes to come up with a business idea that includes all 3 of these. And it can be a skill, a tool, just some words or a way of thinking, the actual subject, but you've got to merge them together. And that they came up with the most inspiring ideas that were actually doable. And you think, well, this is so much more engaging, and you can include maths and you can include this and that and the other, and they'll want to do it rather than just feel like, I don't remember a thing that I learned in maths beyond
and that where you're just introducing playfulness in a way without them realizing it, but you're having fun and they're having fun, and it gives them opportunities in life, because they're going to go to a job, and without this creative mind they will have to struggle somehow to fit in again. But thank you for sharing that. I think it's great. Yeah. What would be your little advice giving to parents who have children that they find them difficult and they struggle with them and their situations? What would you say to some of those?
The first one would be write. If even if you're not into writing, I would make yourself sit down and write down all of the things that you are finding wrong or bad or a challenge. But
Mm-hmm.
after every single point, actually write where that, like, why it's triggering you, what you think they should do, and all of the other stuff that comes with it that you wouldn't necessarily say to them, but just get everything out of your head first.
Mm.
And start to ask yourself why, like you did with me, that why question. Just keep asking yourself why, and
Mm.
then eventually you'll feel the tension dissipate and actually understand that some of it isn't as bad as you think.
Mm.
And it's so much easier to jump to conclusions and think there's something wrong or I need to fix, or that this is a challenge, or is actually they're just a human going through the human experience. And
Mm.
if their reaction, I spoke about this the other week when I did my TV slot on talking to teenagers so they'll listen, and one of the things I said was whatever their reaction is to what you say, that's an insight into how they feel at that moment, and how safe they feel to express themselves. So whatever the challenge is, that's the reaction you're getting is an indication of what you've allowed to be created thus far with them. So ask yourself why it's triggering you.
Thank you for saying that. I think it's extremely important that they do that exercise that you suggest, because then again they look inside them.
Yeah, it's all internal.
Thank you, Ellie. I really appreciate, and lovely having you here.